What's good, everybody out there in Facebook land as well as YouTube? This is Rob C., one of the four hosts of the premier, that's it, the premier show on the HBCU Singles Lounge Network, Unveiling His and Her Truths. Yes, tonight is the premier show. We're going to have an organic and real conversation between the men and women in this chat. We have great participants. We have 8 men and 8 women that have agreed to be a part of this conversation. And I have 3 other hosts that I will introduce shortly that will be a part of this great conversation as well with yours truly. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the 4 hosts. It will be myself, along with Fran, along with Sina, as well as Kamal. And I'm going to go ahead and let Miss Fran take over from this point forward. Enjoy the show.
Hey, folks. So I'm here right now just to kind of give us a little bit of purpose setting. So again, I'm Francie Brown McClure. So excited to be here and to share with my folks. I genuinely respect and care about each and everybody that you see on this screen. And so I'm super excited for the time that we're going to have together. So the purpose of this conversation, we have a men's chat, we have a women's chat, and it's opportunities for us to come together as genders and have our own conversations and to talk about the unique things that come up for us as men and women. But we recognize that as much as we are working on ourselves, we also have to come together collectively to work together to move us forward as a community and as a people. And so this chat is an opportunity for us to come together as men and women and learn and build with each other, right? So just want to make sure everybody understands the purpose of this. This is not a one and done, right? This is not you're on here and you're going to get everything you need tonight. That's not the situation. This is a building block. So we will continue to add every time we come together. It'll be a mix of things that are current, that are happening in our world, but it'll also be kind of long-standing things that are always kind of circling within our relationship dynamics and in our communities. But we're excited again, and this is an opportunity for us to come together and learn and grow with and from each other. I want to talk about the space here. And so it's not just the space for those of us who are here on the Zoom right now, but it's also the virtual space for you all on YouTube and Facebook. A lot of people talk about safe space, right? We're not here to create safe space because what's safe for me is not necessarily what's safe for you. And people trying to keep each other safe in that way actually doesn't move us forward. So what we're looking to create here is brave space. We want people to be brave and to step out, to speak their truth, and to hear and receive the truth from other people. So again, this is a space where you can come out, where you can say what you need to say, and we want to encourage you to be brave. Now, participants we have our own established rules of engagement that we've collectively put together. And so we know what we need to feel safe and secure and comfortable with each other. And that is facilitating us in this brave space. So that's the setting, giving y'all a little context. And now we're gonna dig right on into it. So here we go. I'm gonna ask y'all some questions right now. Now, I don't need anybody to necessarily kind of blurt out loud, but if you have something that you really are like, oh, I need to say it, let us know. But this is an activity to get us into our first discussion. And for those of you who are watching us, please feel free to participate as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. One second. If I can get my life together and do this. And of course, it's not working now. That's all right. We'll get started. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. I made it happen. I got it. So everybody see my screen? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
I see head nods. All right, great. So I'm going to ask you some questions and I want you to think about them. And so again, remember, if there's something that you really want to speak on, you can raise your hand and we can talk about it, but just reflect on these things. So first question for you, Which one of these emotions was the most frequently displayed in your family? Which one of these emotions was the most frequently displayed in your family? Next question. Which one of these emotions was rarely displayed in your family?
Music has his hand raised.
Music, yeah, let's go.
In my family, mostly a lot. Growing up was a lot of happiness. We joked and laughed a lot.
I love it.
Okay.
So the happiness showed up a lot for you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because I was raised a little bit different into, you know what I mean, talk of being happy of what we do have, not to sit and be sad of what we don't have. So as long as we have life, as long as we had each other, we was gonna be okay. So we joked when things are bad and joked when things was good. So that helped us out.
Love it. Ashley, I saw a hand.
Ashley?
So mine is a mixture of anger and sadness. A lot of traumatic things have happened in my family that they have not dealt with, and so they have this chip on their shoulder where they just walk around mad for no apparent reason because they refuse to deal with the sadness in their life.
And I saw
Didn't affect
Michael.
me.
And
Thank you,
Mike?
Ashley. I saw Michael. You got a hand?
Yes. Um, my family, we're pretty much, we're God raised, God fearing. So we've learned to, be happy with what we have. So I've never really witnessed any of, the other emotions, anger, fear, disgust, but they're there. It's just when we pretty much come together as a family, we're just, we're all happy to be around each other. We love each other. We embrace each other, in times of sadness. Growing up in North Carolina, uh, when we all gather together, it's just one big happy family. So we know that there's going to be some heartache, but we know how, having our faith in God and praying through those difficult times, we're just one of those typical happy families.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
You all make sure that you pay attention to these words. I'm going to take them off when I ask the next questions, though. So keep them there in your minds. All right. So here's the next question. So I asked you which feelings were most easily discussed in your family, which feelings were not easy to discuss, which emotion or feeling do you find the easiest to express? Which emotion or feeling do you find the easiest to express? Ro.
I'm sure my family who's watching would agree with this. It doesn't take much for me to pop off. If I'm working on it, Jesus still reigns. I am much better than I used to be, but having a woman-dominated family, essentially they run things and seeing they don't take a lot of junk. So growing up with that, you emulate that, and then you realize that doesn't always work in every situation. So you have to make changes.
Thank you, Myron.
Yeah, in my family, humor, I guess humor and happiness kind of goes hand in hand, but humor played a big role. When things were good, we made jokes. When things were bad, we made jokes of those things, just to kind of lighten things up, and kind of thicken the skin up a little bit. So for me now, the easiest thing for me to display when things are going on is some kind of a humor, to make light of something, or a lot of myself. So the happiness and the humor really comes out and is very easy to do.
Thank you. So next question, folks. I think you can find a pattern in where I'm going. Y'all should know where I'm going next. Which emotion is the most difficult for you to express? Anybody wanna? Okay, Carrie, are you clapping or are you raising your hand?
I'm raising my hand. I'm still figuring out the whole emoji thing. So I would say for me, the most difficult emotion to display is anger. I've never really had, like diagnosed anger management problems, but I guess over the course of my life, I've let a lot of things roll off my back and kind of chosen what things I was going to react to and which ones I didn't. And so that usually goes well. On occasion, though, I internalize so much and don't release it that when it does kind of get to that bubbling over point, it's not pretty. It's never violent, but it's usually I'm a very passionate person, and so the things I'm passionate about that are positive, the emotions are very positive. But when that shifts to negativity, it's not a side of me that I like to see very often. I've actually been in relationships where I let so many things roll off my back that when I finally got angry, women have said to me, "I didn't know you could get angry," which then made me even more angry because I'm not a robot. I am a human being. I'm prone to human emotions. But I think for me, for the sake of my stress level, my health, and everything else, I try to find different ways to release it, so that I'm not showing it, displaying it. Now again, because I'm passionate, sometimes people do mistake my passion for anger, but rarely am I allowing the anger to overtake me because it just doesn't, it doesn't feel good at the end. I'm usually emotionally spent afterwards. And then I find myself having to backtrack and apologize to people for things I may have said that I wasn't thinking about before I said them. So for me, over the course of my life, it's been the hardest for me to display anger, which can be a good thing, but also can be a negative thing.
Thanks. And Stacey, you'll be our last one for this.
As sad as it is, I would say that the one that's hard for me to express is sadness. Kind of growing up, it was kind of got to be tough, right? So if I was being teased, you can't let them know that it bothers you because then they continue to tease you, right? So you can't be sad about it or anything like that. You kind of had to suck it up and be like, that don't bother me, because hopefully they would stop doing whatever it was that they were doing, that would be hurting you or something like that, because they see that it's not getting a reaction. And I was literally told, like, if you stop letting them see that it bothers you, like, they'll stop doing it. We talked in the previous chat about things that we were teased about. Like I said before, for me, it was the color of my skin, right? Being one of the darkest in my family. So after that, it was, other whatever the case may be. And so therefore I was trying to kind of hold this facade of I'm strong. Like I can take it, I can hold it. It's all good. So I'm not gonna let anybody see me sweat. I'm not gonna let anybody see me cry. I'm not gonna let nobody, see me have anything that is a possible way for them to kind of get into me. And then that kind of leads to what Carrie was saying, like, you take a lot of stuff in, and then when you finally release, it is all the way bad. And that's, it's weird because I'm sort of not really into the, astrology stuff, but Carrie and I are both Pisces, right? So, we are very much emotional type beings. So I'm usually a very happy-go-lucky person, but when you take that sadness or anger or whatever, and you just keep taking it in, and never releasing it, eventually something is going to break, and it is not a good look for anybody. Trust me.
I appreciate that. So I want us to, again, think about those 4 questions that I've asked, right? What feelings were most easily discussed in your family? What feelings were not easy to discuss or got ignored in your family? What emotion is easiest for you to express, and what emotion is most difficult for you to express? Consider those things and remember your answers, right? And start to think, are there some patterns that are showing up? Right? Are there some patterns that are showing up? And think about this with this next question that's going to lead us into our larger group discussion. We said we're talking about mask on, mask off, right? Which emotion is most likely to mask the other emotions that you're having? Which emotion is most likely to mask the other emotions that you're having? Right? And we wear masks to cover things up. We wear masks because we don't want people to see what's behind something, right? So I want you to think about that. Let's have a conversation, right? And again, remember, this is context of men and women and how we show up in our dynamics with each other. So floor is open. Ashley, I saw a hand.
So I will start by saying that my happiness is very authentic. If I'm truly happy, I'm truly happy. But in regards to your question, I don't allow people to see me sad. I don't allow people to see me frustrated. And so I tend to keep a smile on my face. So I would say, while I'm authentic in my happiness, there are times where I am sad, angry, frustrated, or whatever, that I allow my happiness to shine through and mask my true feelings of hurt, my true feelings of anger. Yes, I'm not transparent in that sense because I don't want anybody to see me. I'm very mask on at that point for multiple reasons. One, I hate the question of what's wrong with you. That irritates my soul. Two, I don't, being a Libra, I see those emotions as weak. I don't like to ask for help. I'm not a person to be helped. I am the helper. So a sadness emotion, an emotion of anger is very vulnerable for me. And so I don't allow people in that space. So I will keep a smile all day. Again, it's authentic 92% of the time, but that 8%, you really getting a fake, I don't want to cuss you the fuck out smile. That one.
Gucci.
I think for me, it is my happiness that tends to kind of be the mask for my anger, for a multiplicity of reasons, from life roles to a certain image I'm supposed to uphold in public. And sometimes that can actually be detrimental for me because I get it all the time. You're supposed to be a man of faith, X, Y, and Z, and you're supposed to be uptight because things are going to get better and joy is coming in the morning. And so half the time, well, not even just half the time, a lot of times I find myself trying to keep a straight face to uphold an image that some days does not embody who I really am. And part of that comes from not always having the liberty to express how I truly feel in a moment, which is hard because there are times where I need to be in touch with that side of me that needs to grieve, that needs to be sad, that needs to deal with the ills or the discomforts of my life. And not always having that liberty forces me to really be happy when I'm really not. So
Appreciate that from both of you. Interesting because you both mask with the same emotion, but for different reasons. How does this look in our relationships, right? We walk into relationships with folks. We have these emotional experiences from our childhood, from our past, ways that we show up that we're not even often aware of, right? And then we start to exist or coexist with another person wearing a mask, right? And that this person potentially believes is the truth and not necessarily a mask. Music.
As far as my truth, things I had to deal with come to light was how I used my mask of happiness. A lot of men, as far as being a man, we use that, especially when you're a certain of age, because we're not supposed to, was always not to suck it up when things are going bad or we have some issues. We're not supposed to sit there and whine and complain to our significant other. I mean, as a man, I'm supposed to come home and listen to your issues, the problems, and everything, and hold back my problems that I have. My fears of not getting this promotion, not getting this job that I wanted to get so I can have more money to bring home to the family and things like, and you know what I mean, to do better. You know what I mean? Most men, you know what I mean, we want to get married, so we want to make the money so we can get the engagement ring. You know what I mean? Because we ain't no little cheap rings no more. But you know what I mean, I had to use that, had, you know, continue smiling when I was really in a darker place in a relationship. Because I couldn't, because I was always told like, no, you a man. You're supposed to go to work, you're supposed to suck it up, do it, tough it out. You don't complain. But in deep down, I was sad. I was disgusted of where I didn't get that promotion that I should have got, or didn't get that next level job position I got, because I put in all this time in school. I got this degree. I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be there because I want to be, you know, because we supposed to get the job, get the money, get the ring. We got the whole family. So I put on that mask, you know what I mean? And it hurt because it messed up the relationship because she didn't know what made me angry. What things that she was doing that was making me sad. How could she help me come out that dark place? Because I didn't know how to communicate that. I just put on that mask of haha music, the joke, got the jokes, got the playing that I'm that guy, you know, he's always happy. And when I wasn't on those days. It was plenty of days like that. And it definitely affected my relationship and ended that relationship because of that.
Appreciate you sharing.
Fran, you mind if I jump in just real quick?
Of course, please.
So music brought up a good point about manhood. Men, do you feel that your manhood could be a mask in your relationship, meaning that because of your male pride, like always want to be the provider, make sure you have your ducks in a row and all that stuff, like music said, could be a mask to you in your relationships with women, and like music said, not be able to share your feelings, not be able to, you know, be open on what's really going on in the inside?
Definitely. That's what it is right there. You know what I mean? We are taught to be, you know what I mean? I'm the alpha. We don't show weakness. We don't give that. You don't express it. We've been taught that from the older generation before us. You didn't hear we always were told you don't cry. What's the crime? You don't cry. So that is a very big thing. You know what I mean? You can't, if you can't express yourself, because that's not manly.
I think I saw Brett.
Yeah.
Brett, you had a hand?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I've been thinking about the questions you asked about your emotions and things of that nature. I don't think any of mine were on that list. So I didn't really know how to answer it. And I don't know how many emotions I have. To music's point, you know, as men, you know, I say this often, and I think what I've discovered about myself is I use humor to express my frustrations about things, but I try to do it in a way that's acceptable. Um, and it's tiresome. You know, I always say men have three lists. There's a list of what makes women happy. There's a list of things women hate, which is constantly added to and amended by the day. And then there's a third list of things that you're not a man if you don't do these things. And you get that, and that's before you get to the part about being black. You're not even a black man yet, you're just a man. You got to go through all this crap. And it gets tiresome. And the way I grew up was I had a pretty good family. You know, we didn't have any drama. But I learned very early that, how can I put this? You're just a man, you just swallow it. You can't nobody wants to hear what you have to say. It doesn't matter. If you try to express your feelings, nobody has time to listen. So I learned pretty early on, you're on your own, nobody's coming to save you. And then when I got older and started trying to express myself to women in relationships, well, you hear, the words whining were used earlier. I've been in discussion groups since the internet was invented. Well, I'm trying to express my feelings to strangers or stop whining. People that don't know anything about me, stop whining. We don't want to hear them. And I didn't feel like I was whining. I was just trying to talk about how I felt. So you get your hand popped 600 times for expressing your thoughts and your feelings. You say, well, I'm not talking to anybody anymore. And then you try to date some women and then you get the same thing. Or you feel like, well, I can't talk to her. She's going to think I'm weak. And that's going to be just one more reason for her not to want to deal with me. So instead of being your true self, you're thinking about all the ways to not offend this person, or you're thinking about all the ways to not turn this person off. And I think I've carried that. Even in my dialogue with some of y'all when we're having fun, I'm joking around, but I'm constantly thinking, I don't want to turn anybody off. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I'm gonna be completely honest, like off the top, I had a great deal of trepidation about this talk. Like, and no offense to y'all, nobody's done anything to me. It stresses me out to talk to women. It's just like, what am I going to say that's going to be fucked up? I'm not trying to, but I just, through the course of my life, it's nothing you say is right. And even when you're being honest, so now you're being penalized for being your authentic self. So you can't be that. So I just tell a bunch of jokes. So yeah.
I'm
So
going to,
being sorry, go ahead, friends.
no, I was going to go to Toya. I saw her hand.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, like, to kind of piggyback off of Brett real quick. I think that's one of the things that kind of show up in our relationships as males and females when we've been raised a certain way and we've been taught certain things that are pretty much could be unrealistic. Sometimes I know as far as me, with me and my mom, it was just the three of us, my mom and my sister. She always taught us to be raised that men took care of you. And so as I got older, I realized that some of that can be an unrealistic learned behavior, so that I'm looking for men to specifically just take care. So I don't want to hear your whining. I don't want to hear, just like what music said as well, come home and you want to tell me about your day, but you're supposed to be taking care of me. And so now you don't feel vulnerable enough, or you don't feel safe enough to be able to open up to me, because again, these are the things that we've learned in our childhood, and these are the behaviors that we've learned growing up, and what we've experienced in life. All of those things take place comes into play in our relationships, and we'll end up doing them wrong. So it'll be to our demise in the relationship, or the other person, same thing, and we both will end the relationship because of learned behavior and unrealistic expectations. And I think that's how it shows up in our relationships when we're talking about feelings and emotions and just living out those unrealistic feelings and emotions.
So listening to what people have said, Brett, and then even Toya now, childhood. Think about your childhood and like your parents and who you thought had a great relationship. Now I'm gonna speak for personal experience. My parents were basically put together because they had my brother, meaning their parents told them that they had to get married. I don't really genuinely feel my parents loved each other in love. I think it was a forced thing. But think back to your childhood and think about how love was expressed in your childhood. And now you being an adult, do you feel that's what love is to you? Do you feel that that's how you're supposed to feel love? Like, let's talk about that. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I saw Myron's hand. Or did you have a comment?
Yeah, I kind of had a comment real quick on what was there before, but I also have one now. So I'll just kind of touch on both. Going to what Music and Brett was saying, I mean, I think definitely, as a man, there are times where, you project that manhood even when things are not going well. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, because I do believe that it's a man's role to kind of shoulder that. But the important thing is to kind of know your limit. When shouldering that is about to become a detriment to you, then you have got to be able to say, hey, this is getting to the point, you know, I need to unload some of this. And the two people have got to be able to know that I'm putting up a front here, you're putting up a front there in terms of dealing other things, but we have to know when it gets to that point where it's going to start breaking us down, then we got to come together, we got to work something out, and then be able to kind of diffuse each other and then go back to it. And I think that's a really key thing. In regard to what Rob was saying, you know, I think I was very fortunate. My parents were together for 60 years. You know, they got married really young. You know, like any couple, they went through, you know, their issues and whatnot, but they always dealt with it, and they always were, you know, they always were a force together. You know what I mean? A lot of times nowadays, kids know they can go to one parent for this and one parent for that. For me, that wasn't going to happen. You went to one, you went to the other. It was a united front. Period. They talked about what was going to go on and the different things. So if you came and tried to, you know, do a little thing on one side, it was shut down quickly. So you know, I really look to my parents for a lot of what I want to see in a relationship. And you know, just looking forward to be able to put that into, you know, actual daily living.
Harry.
You know, it's so funny listening to everyone talk, because everyone that has spoken on this topic has touched on something that I've experienced or been thinking about, but for different reasons. And I've been doing a lot of reflection on the whole family aspect of things recently, in large part because my father is 79 years old, and in my accepting the reality that he's not going to be around forever, I've been spending more time conversing with him, talking with him, more so oftentimes letting him talk to me and listening. And upon reflection, I realized that my father was a very emotionless individual as I was growing up. You know, as music stated and others stated, you know, men of a certain generation were taught that emotions were not manly, that, you know, you know, to almost kind of not feel or not display feelings or what have you. And I've noticed a change in him recently. He's apparently doing a lot of self-reflection, and he's saying things that I've never heard him say before. You know, admitting fault at certain times, and things like that. And you know, it's always been interesting for me because I am, as Stacy alluded to, a Pisces, and so I've always been one who has felt emotion, but one who wasn't always encouraged to show it. And but on the same connection with that, what Rob was saying, my parents have been married for 47 years, and so in my relationships throughout my life, I've always felt like that. Well, here are these two polar opposites who have coexisted for half a century, and if they can make it through things, then these little bumps in the road that I'm getting in these relationships I'm in, they shouldn't be enough to end it. And so I've always had the mindset that we can work through this. You know, I've seen my parents do it, we can do it. And that hasn't always been the case in my personal experience, but I also would say, along the lines of what Rob was saying, I know there was love in my parents' relationship at some point. And then there were kids, me and my two sisters. And then it became sort of a marriage of convenience. You know, my mother was both my parents grew up in Brooklyn, New York. My mother was the first of her family to leave New York and move to the suburbs. And then subsequently everyone followed them. And so they were seen as the rocks of the family. And I think there may have been a little pressure on them to uphold that persona, that belief amongst the family. And so, you know, because even to this day, whenever there's a gathering for any reason, it's at my parents' house. But if I'm very honest with myself, I can say that I haven't seen a whole lot of love in amongst my parents for a long time. And so that a lot of what I'm seeing now as I've gotten older, as my parents have gotten older, has caused me to like look back on my life and ask myself, was I stupid? You know, was I playing this was I living in this fantasy land that, you know, everything is good because two people are together and then all of a sudden, you know, so in my belief, this is how it's supposed to be. And when things didn't work out for me, I kind of felt like, oh, this must be my fault. There's something wrong with me. But I'm starting as an adult, and as I get older, I'm starting to see that maybe, well, realistically, everything is not what it seems. And I'm never one to try to get in someone's head or try to figure out what two people or one person is thinking, but I'm starting to understand, I guess, the game a little bit more. And, you know, for me, I've always been able to express my emotion, but I understand, but it was always a push pull with my father because whenever I started to get passionate about things, he would shut me down. And I think finally it all starts to make sense. And so I would say that as far as my relationships have gone, I probably should have stopped trying to live so much in my parents' shoes because the shoes I thought they were walking in weren't theirs. And I'm 45 years old, but I guess I can say better late than never because I finally figured it out, and hopefully I can kind of move forward. I can, you know, do what I need to do and not worry so much about what others around me have done or are doing.
Appreciate that. I wanna try to move us a little bit and ask this question, right? There's been some really rich discussion, some really good sharing. And I want to know, how do we start to unmask ourselves, right? How do we unmask ourselves? But also, how do we help our partners begin to take off their mask? And I'm specifically talking to my ladies on this chat because, you know, I haven't heard a whole lot of our voices in this space. So, how do we begin to unmask ourselves? And how do we help other folks feel comfortable in taking off their mask? Ro.
And not that I have done this well ever, but I think you have to make sure they know you're open and try to have a no judgment zone where they are free to express themselves how they need to express themselves, because everybody definitely does not do that alike. And it takes time to build that kind of thing. But the more you do it, they're like, okay, I can say this was a crappy day, and they're not going to judge me like, oh my gosh, they're down again, kind of thing. So you have to let people be themselves, be who they are, and kind of accept them for that. Of course, everybody can make changes and adjustments, but being open to hearing what they're saying instead of trying to fix it or, you know, tell them to be something different.
Ashley, and then we'll go to Mike.
So you asked the question of how do we start to unmask ourselves? You got to peel back your own layers and acknowledge and accept where you are. You have to accept the emotions that you're masking, the feelings that you're masking, the issues that you have swept under whatever rug you swept up under before you go and help someone else. We have, mostly women, tend to have this thought that once we find a man or we're in a relationship, we give him the expectation to fix us emotionally, but we haven't accepted what's wrong, what's broken. We haven't accepted what has not, we haven't dealt with it. So before you jump into a relationship with the expectation that your partner, and it goes for men too, is going to understand your past and understand your issues and try to assist and help you fix those issues, you have to acknowledge them and you have to accept them for what they are. And that's just what it is.
I'm going to go to Michael.
I believe it starts with trust. You know, being able to trust your significant other with, you know, your deepest fears, your deepest emotions, your deepest hurts, and from coming from someone who's been married, I trusted my ex-wife with a lot of my hurt, and to just see it turn around and be thrown in my face as a way for her to express her hurt, to try to hurt me. And when I started to notice that, I began to pull back. So I did not express most of my emotions after that. And it took a toll on me because I could not express myself fully. So it got to the point where I could not communicate how I really felt because the fear of it turning into an argument, and then see what I have opened my heart up to you be thrown back at me as a low blow. I'll put it like that. So, but I want to jump back to Carrie. I grew up, in a two-parent household. My mother, my father, they were madly in love with each other. But what I did not notice, or what was not shown, was their hurt.
Mm.
As a parent, I cannot express my anger, my disgust, my stressors, especially to my daughter and also to my son who's now in the military. And all the time they have to see daddy as just being this strong man, which I am, but there are some times when I'm by myself, a lot of times I go to my corner, and a lot of times I just get down on my knees, and I just be, start praying to God, and just the tears just be flowing, and for those who have never been married and who want to get married, uh, divorce should never be an option, because for one, it takes you through something, and it a lot of people say, you just gotta just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on. Nah, that don't work all the time. It takes years to heal, from a divorce. You see your significant other just transform into someone who you've never seen, and you have to hide your emotions because your children are looking at you. My daughter is looking at me. My son is definitely looking at me how I treat his mother, and I know that he's, taking notes growing up to be the man that he is. And I'm starting to see that the way that I loved his mother is starting to show in how he's dating. And I'm also starting to see uh, how my daughter is starting to, uh, I want to say, she's at the age now where she likes boys, but she sees me being this tight knit father figure, and she know I'm not going to accept anybody, just coming into her life treating her any kind of way. But to really be able to take my mask off and really express how I feel is gonna take a lot. And I'm gonna really need to have to trust you. And if I don't trust you, you ain't gonna know nothing about me.
Okay, before we transition this topic, Michael, I just have a quick question because we're gonna throw this to Cena in a minute. You said when you were hurting, you couldn't express your hurt to your ex-wife. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I said that correctly.
Yes.
Now, was that the hurt that from the relationship or just in general that you could not express and then that was being used against you?
It was pretty much both.
Okay.
I'll say predominantly it was the hurt from the relationship. You know, we argued. You know, a lot of people always say, you know, when a woman argues with you, she loves you. Nah, that may be true on some aspect, but my ex-wife was trying to find a way out. So she would start the arguments. And what really proved the point was one particular argument we had. You know, I pretty much told her, I said, you know what? I can't believe, you know, you're acting this way. You know, it's like you're trying to get me to leave. But then when she responded that I'm surprised you didn't, it just took me for a loop. Like, okay, so this is what you're trying to do. So, okay, you're trying to find a way out. All right.
Gotcha.
Well, I know I see a couple more hands, and forgive us for moving the time forward. But the other half of this mask on, mask off topic was to explore your love language and your apology language. So I know initially when that came up, it kind of looked like, what do they have to do with one another? But just in going off of what Francie did earlier with her emotional activity, you all took quizzes on your love languages and your apology languages. So what I want you to think about is, with knowing your love language, how in your relationships, whether it's been your love relationships or just friendships, daily relationships, or what have you, how do you mask your actual love language and your apology language when you're going through relationships, or how have you masked them in the past? So some of the ladies, if you guys want to chime in, we haven't heard much from some of you ladies on here.
Also, I see Gucci still up. So
Gucci, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to touch on the other part, but I kind of merged the two together. So I guess one of the things that has really helped me in terms of taking off the mask has been some internal work. And part of that is knowing that being able to take off the mask is an act of courage. Oftentimes we place the responsibility of helping our mask come off on other people, but I've had to learn the hard way through relationships that that's not necessarily their responsibility. It's on us. And I shared a personal story within the chat, how I was deeply wounded in a relationship, actually suffer PTSD to this day, because I found myself going to a place where I trusted someone, and at the point of every disagreement, that was thrown up against me. And one of the ways I walked towards personal healing was by having enough courage to look myself in the mirror daily to realize that regardless of how life twists and turns me, that I am enough. And once I begin to find that sufficiency within myself and taking that ownership within self, I then found the courage to not only let other people love me, but to begin to love other people. But I had to take a moment of personal accountability and be courageous enough to come up off of it. And so one of my love languages now is words of affirmation.
Yes, Gucci.
love it.
Love it.
Perfect segue.
Latoya?
I was gonna say the same thing, that it takes courage not only just to look within yourself, but you also have to have the courage to be able to be vulnerable enough, because we weren't meant to live life alone. And that's just not in a relationship with the opposite sex, but that's just relationship with one another in the same sex. Have courage enough to love yourself enough to be able to connect with someone else, my girlfriend, and have them help you and show you love. One of the best things that I know, I'm not trying to get too biblical, but being able to have a relationship with a friend and you guys exhibit God's love. You know, God was the one who showed you first that you were enough. And he always tells you to take heart and be courageous and do have trust in him. So I think it takes courage to have trust in your mate and or in your friendships, and be able to allow them to show you that they do love you and that they can, you know, show mercy and grace upon you to show that you are worthy enough for a friendship. And I think also too, you know, my love language also is words of affirmation. I love to give affirm, like to affirm my friends. And I think that's another thing to help my spouse when I get one, if you out there, babe. To help me with my spouse, I think also to just being open enough to listen to my spouse and let him know that I am here. Like I think it was Renisha who said, in a judgmental tone, just being able to just sit there and listen, and being able to lend an ear and a shoulder and show that, hey babe, I'm here not to judge you, but to be with you and live life with you. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Toy. And I'm gonna Ashley, I'm gonna come back to you. Whitney, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so speaking of apology language, mine is to genuinely repent. So I will say that if I tell you I'm sorry, I'm genuinely sorry. It's not a play on words for me. And just like I hear a lot of the men say, women aren't mind readers either. So, you know, as hard as it is, and we've spoken about this earlier, as hard as it is for you to express emotion, for me, it's very important that you share that with me so that I know how to correct it. Because if I don't know what's going on, I can't fix it. And just like as a man, you want to fix it, women want to fix it too. At least I know I do. Because it's very important to me that, you know, we're all moving in the same direction. We can't be one unit if we're moving in separate directions. So I need to know, you know, what's up. As far as my love language, it's quality time. And I'll say that um, I'm a big fan of spending time with people. Um, and so when we were talking about our relationships with our parents, I remember when I was a little girl, I used to spend a lot of time with my dad, a lot of time with my dad. So I always became this daddy's girl. And then as I got older, it seemed that our time together was less and less. And we spent more time butting heads than actually, you know, spending time in each other's presence. And I find myself needing my dad more as a as a grown woman, as an adult, than I felt like maybe I needed him then, because my mother was always there too. I grew up in a two-parent household. Um, so when it comes to quality time, I find that in my relationships, the reason why I mask that is because it has been my experience that it's been very difficult to ask men for quality time. Instead of quality time, they want to throw money at it. They think so. So when you have these posts in the group about how women always think that men need to take care of a woman or spend money on her, well, it's because that's been our experience for some of us. I can get you to pay for a trip, but I can't get you to go with me, you know, because either your mind is somewhere else or you rather spend your quality time somewhere else. So as a math, I just don't ask for it. Um, so I have grown to learn that if a man can't even be in the same room with you, but he wants to call you his woman, then that's not your man. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and I'm not asking to be up under you, but I am asking to be in your presence. If you want to acknowledge me as your woman, as your girl, as your wife, as your queen, or, you know, whatever it may have you. So that's been kind of like one of the hard things for me, is just making sure, is being able to speak to those needs and wants to a man and not having him diminish what I need from him. And if he's not able to give that to me, then sir, you just need to walk away. You know, um, there's no point in you trying to establish groundwork here, you know, because it's just not going to work. So that's what I wanted to speak on that.
Um, Ashley, you're next. Yulia, you're after her.
I'm gonna try to get through this as best as I can, so bear with me. We talk about being in a brave space. So I think when Francie brought in the emotions from our childhood and our families and all that good stuff that ties into now, um, I'm gonna get through it. So I'm adopted. I don't feel bad about it. I don't know who birthed me. Don't really give two shits. about it because they miss out on a great person. I have amazing parents, but my parents went through a divorce. And it was to the point where my dad was so in love with my mom, they have a 10-year age difference, that he was ignoring the red, the green, the orange, all the flags. And I saw that and physically saw my mom totally disregard my dad's emotions and his willing to be a good husband to her in that space. And in turn, I later became depressed. I used to think that he was weak. I used to say I don't want that type of man. But my dad always spent time with me like Whitney. My dad gave me words of affirmation. And my love language is quality time. Maybe it's because I have this small void of people leaving me. Maybe because my dad divorced and I had to deal with my wicked stepmama. And they probably listening to this because I definitely share it and hear the truth. But my mama, in my opinion, was not the ideal wife for me. My grandfather passed early, so I didn't have this picture perfect illusion of what a marriage was supposed to be. Everybody in my family has seen a divorce court and divorce lawyer. Some have never been married ever in life. And so I turned to TV and I turned to what was romanticized as a marriage and thinking I could make it work, and it can't. Here's the truth. If you can't be with me, like Whitney said, you can't be with me. If you can't accept who I am, and you have to do both, because they were very high on my love language. I need you to spend time. I need you to affirm. Um, and in turn, I fuck up. Can I cuss? I cuss. I fuck up. I'm not
Yes.
perfect. Thank you. I fuck up. I'm not perfect. Here's the truth. When it comes to my apology, I own my shit. I don't sugarcoat it. I am a person of accountability. If you did it, say you did it. Let's deal with it. Let's move on. I don't do the runaround shit. I don't have time for it. And so my past, my past is not going to define my future. Why did I have to cry? Fuck.
It's
It's okay.
it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. You speaking, you're speaking your truth.
Yeah. And I actually have a couple of questions for you when you're done. So go ahead.
I'm not going to let my parents pass that down to generation. And I'm not, whenever I have children, I'm not going to pay. This is not going to be a generational thing. We're going to break this curse starting with me. And that's peeling back these layers. That's letting go of past situations and starting anew. I can't make whoever is my husband, shout out to Toya, hey babe, I'm not gonna make you pay for whatever has happened to me or in my parents' life or in their lives or whatever. At some point, we have to break this generational idea of we have to be what our parents were. If your parents lived in great and had a long marriage, I applaud them. I adore them. That is wonderful. That's not everybody's story. And it's definitely not mine. Okay, I got through it.
Okay, but well, actually, before you go, I actually have a couple of questions for you. So, your mother's relationship with your father, how does that frame how you approach relationships now? And then the second question is, and I think this is kind of overlooked a lot, right? A lot of times, I think men are perceived as weak for maybe allowing a spouse or a significant other to walk over them, when in fact, it takes a lot of strength, to, I would say, kind of keep the goalposts in mind, when you're going through that shit. Because I've seen it with family members, you know what I mean? And I mean, just to be perfectly honest, it's something that happened with me in my marriage, when, there were a lot of things that I put up with, mainly for the sake of my marriage and to continue to support the family. So how do your experiences, A, frame how you approach a relationship now, and then B, what does a strong man look like to you after that?
So, my mom and I have a weird relationship. We're kind of like sisters. But in regards to that question, I vowed never to be the wife or the significant other my mom was. She was emotionally detached. She she might have love. I don't know if my mom truly was in love with my dad. I don't see that. I can tell you hands down, my dad to this day is madly in love with my mama. They get together for
Still.
the sake, still, 20 years after their divorce.
Wow.
We get together for the sake of me, because I'm their only child. We get together for holidays, and the looks, like my dad will sit across the table and just gaze at my mom. And I have made a true stand that I am against them getting back together, because I don't know if my mom can ever love my dad like my dad loves my mom. And I would never put my daddy through that. I listen, that's my homeboy, that's my best friend. And I fight. I love my mama, don't get it wrong. I fight for her too, but we are very super protective of each other. Um, I had to think as I got older, come out about how I view my daddy as a teenager and how I view him in my adult life. My daddy loves my mom unconditionally, flaws and all. And if was ever given a chance to get back with her, he would still get back with her. Um, but with limitations. He didn't grow up. He didn't have another failed divorce since then. He's had 3 failed divorces, but out of the 3, he's still in. And the reason why the third one failed because he's still in love with my mom. I want a man to love me unconditionally. My dad has taught me that a man is supposed to provide, protect, and profess for you, and he does that to all with both of his wives that have his children, and he does it to his children. My fear when it comes to children is I'm strong enough to recognize that. I don't think my brother, who is 21, who his parents have been separated since he was 15, and then his mom went to prison. That's her fault. Um, I don't think he's gonna see. He's gonna miss that. He doesn't have a close relationship with my father like I do, and so he's missing links. He was raised by his 3 sisters and pretty much was on his own. But for you, in that regards, my dad is my example. Your second question, I forgot it. What was it?
How does your watching the sacrifices that your dad made for your family, how does that frame how you view a quote unquote strong man?
God only made one of my daddies. He didn't make them. He didn't make multiple of them. So I'm never gonna say you have to be like my father. You have to bring your own traits in your crate by yourself. But to be able to communicate, to be able to love unconditionally, to be able to, I'm not. You ain't got to provide for me because we can provide for each other. This is not take and give. We gonna hold each other down, and I don't think he's ever had that. And let me just be honest. My dad is a deacon. He has always instilled me. If God is not first, you don't have nothing. So if you're not coming to me with God in your heart, there's no room for me in your heart. Period. And I'm not saying you got to be a devout Christian and we got to not eat cuss and eat pork no, that's your personal relationship with God has to shine through you enough for me to see that. And those are the traits that my father has taught me. Let me give you a caveat. My mom is very stubborn. She's very selfish. She has a lot of hurt. She has taught me what not to do. And I've often said that I got the best of both worlds: how to love and what not to do as a wife.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley, for your vulnerability. Thank
Don't
you.
tell nobody I cried though.
Yeah, I mean, we see you laugh enough, so I think it's okay to be brave in that instance. So I actually have another question, kind of set as kind of like a bridge from what Ashley has shared, right? So I think this goes out to everybody, right? We've all taken the love language test and the apology test. How does your past relationships frame your apology language? And I'll share a little bit. Like for me, I feel like my relationship with my dad and my relationship with my ex-wife frames my apology language. And what I mean by that is with my dad, my parents are still married. after 50 some odd years or whatever. But my dad had a very, he had a bad problem with alcohol. And there's a lot of like trauma from that has kind of seeped into our family. And I never felt like, my apology language is own up to your shit. Just own up to it. You know what I mean? I never felt like he owned up to it. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same thing with my ex-wife. You know, there's a lot of shit that she did through our marriage and then subsequently after our marriage that strongly, you know, reaffirms my apology language. Just own up to your shit. Just own up to it. So I'm interested to hear from other people, like, how does your, you know, your relationship with your parents and your past relationships kind of frame your apology language? And I definitely want to go to Brett, because I know Brett has, you know, you kind of brought this to the forefront like months ago, you know, in terms of, well, a month ago, in terms of like the apology. So I definitely want to hear from you on that, kind of lead it off.
Real quick, come out before Brett. Deshaun, you had something.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine. I just want to give her a chance.
For me, my apology language is making restitution. Like, my parents divorced when I was younger, as a result of infidelity on the part of my dad. Right. Then I have a little brother as a result of that infidelity as well. And I guess that part, you know, having my little brother, you know, on that side kind of plays a part to why I really don't say a lot. It just takes me kind of a while to kind of like open up to, you know, whoever, whether it's a guy or just friends in general. Like, I'm that person, I'm filling out what it is. But mine is my apology language is definitely making restitution. And with him, you know, with them divorcing, you know, you have those situations where, yeah, I'm coming, you know, pick you up, or I'm gonna come see you, or I'm gonna come do this, and then, you know, it don't happen. So that kind of taught me your words really don't mean shit at all. Your words don't mean nothing to me. I need to see you. You need to, you know, your actions are everything. And that also plays into my love language of quality time. Like, I need to actually see you, be in your presence. No, I don't have to, you know, we don't really have to do anything. We could just sit here, talk, watch a movie, whatever the case is. But quality time is big for me, you know. And like I said, the making restitution, like, you have to show me what it is. Like, I'm really, you could tell me, you know, whatever you want to say, but I need to actually see it. I need to see your actions have to show what you're saying. Like, it has to match. And if it don't match, I'm just not gonna believe you at all. So
Brett, did you want to touch on what Kamal asked you? And then Stacey.
Of course he does.
I actually had plans to listen. But my apology language is expressions of regret, which Kamal translated it correctly. Own your shit. I joked about a month ago. I said, you know, no, well, it wasn't a joke. Nobody's ever apologized to me, like no woman ever, except for my mother. And I joked that my mother apologized to me once for stepping on my foot. She did, but there's one specific apology she had, and she would repeat it throughout the years. My dad got sick when I was like 14, and he died when I was 16. And in between that time, my mother sat me down and said, son, I can't do this by myself. I need you to be a man. I need you to do it today. So my childhood ended, and I became a grown ass man at like 15, 16 years old. And so I went from puberty to adulthood. But I've been thinking about it recently, and my mother would apologize every few years or so. Son, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, for what? And she said, well, for asking you to be a man. And I'm like, what's wrong with that? You didn't do anything wrong. And it made, and you know, she's gone, so I can't ask her about it. But then I started thinking, what was fucked up about me, where my mother felt like she needed to apologize for asking me to be a man? So that's something I've been dealing with. But my apology language is expressions of regret. And the one person that's apologized, the one woman that's apologized to me in my life, did need to apologize to me. My mother didn't have, I wanted to help. I wanted to be, you know, a good brother for my younger brother. and I wanted to do whatever my mother needed. But yeah, it's my love language, and I've never seen it, and it's kind of fucked up. But I stopped being angry about it. But I know I've had some women do me dirty, so it's kind of like, why the fuck didn't they just apologize? They didn't have to buy me a cake. Just say, Brett, I'm sorry I fucked up. And I learned that that was difficult, and I joke about it, but it really bothers me because I'm like, okay, well, shit, y'all like communication. Communicate with me that you fucked up. Communicate with me that you were dirty. Communicate with me that you were wrong, and nobody does that, and they just go on. I watched them just go la di da on about their business, and I'm just like, okay. So you added yet another scar or two. I look like the you ever see in the movies in prison the guy's marking it off and he draws the line. I got a bunch of that shit, and you just went on with your life. And then I have to work on myself, and I don't even know what's wrong with me. So I'm trying to fix all these things. And all it probably would have taken is for somebody to say, I'm sorry, I fucked up.
Mm.
So yeah,
That's
my apology language is definitely just tell me you sorry. Just say it. I don't even have to believe you. Just say, Brett, I'm sorry. So yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
come on, I
I
talked
think
about
yours is yeah. I think yours is different from mine because I think it's similar or different. I just want you to own up to it. Like don't show regret. Just own up to it. Hey, I fucked up. We can move on, right? So, but yeah, there's still there's an overlap there. I know some of y'all hadn't really talked. I don't want to start picking on people.
Real quick, real quick,
yeah.
Kamal. I just want to throw something out there. Like, I know we're hosting it, but there were a couple things that was said, and I put it in the comments. But what Whitney had mentioned about, like her dad and stuff. My biggest thing when I learned from my own apology language and my love language, my highest one is words of affirmation. And when you ask the question of how does, your relationship with your parents shape how you view relationships now, for me, my parents are still together 30 plus years. However, some of what Ashley said, like, I witnessed a lot growing up. And for me, I'm still like, for a long time, I was still looking for that accountability, my apology language, that accountability from the men that have hurt me ever since I was 5 years old. And one thing that, I wanted to point out was at some point, as hard as it may be, I had to come to grips with the idea that I may never get that apology. I may never get that accountability from those men. And I have to be okay with that. In order for me to grow and be able to happily find someone to be with, I have to be okay, and I have to accept that I may never get that accountability. They may never hold themselves accountable. And you're talking about 5 years old, I'm 32. At some point, I had to just stop and just say, you know what, that apology is never going to come. I'm just going to forgive because it's more for me, so like, yeah, it did definitely, that relationship with my father, it definitely shaped how I viewed men, because those words of affirmation that I wanted to hear from him, I never got. So I looked for in the men that I chose to date or the men that I chose to give my time and energy to. And just for anybody, YouTube, Facebook, that's like watching this, like, it's never too late to change that narrative. And I know for me, it's taken me 32 years to start changing that narrative of getting excited just because a guy told me those words that I always wanted to hear. Like, it's more to it than that. But a lot of that I do know comes from that relationship that I did not get to have with my father. So, I know I see a couple more hands. We do have a couple of questions that you guys yourselves wanted to ask each other, but I'm going to hit Myron, then Whitney, and then we'll close out. We'll get to the end.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of touch on something that Brett said. My apology language is make restitution. And I think the biggest thing that influenced that is in my longest relationship I had, I was with my mom for 15 years. I got the apology, I got the I'm sorry over and over and over and over again, but nothing changed. So, I heard the words I'm sorry, but there was no depth, there was no substance to it because there was no effort done to change the things or to not do what she was sorry about. So I think for me that made hearing it just meant nothing, because I've heard it a lot before and it meant nothing. So I need to see you actually put some effort into making a change. You know, making changes is difficult. You might not make the change, it might not be quick, but at least if I can see you putting the effort into making it, then I know that you really were sorry. You really were, and you really are trying. It's not just, you know, words that just come out just because you're in that situation and you don't want to talk about it or you want to deal with it. So you just say, I'm sorry. So, you know, I think for me, you know, that restitution, that being able to say, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to, you know, we're going to work on it this way, or, you know, just seeing some effort is what really makes the biggest difference.
Thank you, Myron. Whitney.
And just kind of like piggybacking off of what everyone has said. And then when we talk about removing the mask, what we also have to identify too is that we as Black people or African Americans, however you identify, there's a lot of trauma there, historical trauma. So if you want me to remove the mask, we also have to address the historical trauma that we have faced, you know, all the way down the line. You know, there's a lot of things that we are hiding because it is ingrained in us to hide it and not talk about. So when we talk about alcoholism, when we talk about domestic violence, when we talk about sexual abuse within Black family, all of that happens. That is not a white people thing. That is a cultural thing that exists here in America, and unfortunately, it is ingrained in us as Black people because we are here and this culture is instilled in us. So another question to ask is, how do we break these cycles within family? And I think Ashley touched on it as well, that she's going to break this cycle and not bring it into the next generation, the generation in which she brings into this world. So that's also what we need to think about as well. If you want me to take my mask off, I need for you not to feel that there's a stigma around, say, mental health. You know, if I say to my partner, I'm schizophrenic, I need for you not to treat me as if, you know, I'm not a human being or I'm not 100%, you know? So there's a lot of things that we have to discuss within Black community that's keeping us from removing the mask as well, both men and women.
I know I see two more hands, and I'm sorry to have to do that to you guys, but you all had the last part, the wrap up, you all asked some questions that you wanted the opposite sex to answer. And Music and Stacy, I want you guys to keep your hands up because I'm going to give you guys first dibs on those questions. So Kamal, if you will drop the questions that the men had for the women and the women had for the men.
Well, actually, I know. Well, I think we were trying to give other people a chance to talk, and I know, music has contributed a lot. But I think for this next question, I want to get one of the other fellas who hasn't really said much to kind of answer this one. So the question is for the guys. Do you know? Excuse me, for the women. I'm sorry. Do you know what healing feels like? Have you been through it? And if so, are you sure? And I'm sorry, I'm going to reverse that. Not for music, but to the women. There's some women who haven't really responded a lot, so I definitely want to hear from some of the other ones. And I know Deshaun, you haven't said a whole lot. I mean, I think you've responded once, but I definitely want to hear. I'd like to hear your kind of take on this.
Okay, repeat that, the beginning again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you know what healing feels like? Have you been through it? And if so, are you sure?
Honestly, there's a lot of things, from past and just life in general that no, like we're definitely not, me personally, not healed from. Like that definitely, still working on that, still trying to, work through past things before I go into, a relationship or anything like that. Just making sure that I'm good, and we want to make sure, that, like I said, make sure that you're good. But I'm trying, to be healed. And again, that goes back to, the apology language for me, having to kind of get over things that happened with my dad, seeing things that happened, with my mom and my dad together, how their situation happened, seeing, my mom kind of move on and still kind of deal with the same kind of stuff even after moving on in a new relationship. So I'm trying to, I'm watching other people, um to kind of frame what I do, like as she was saying earlier, like you seeing what not to do, and also seeing what you should expect, honestly, from that person of the opposite sex. Like, I'm supposed to expect you to be there, to be honest, to for me to, be open and be willing enough for me to, be open to you, and be vulnerable with you and create a safe space for me to talk to you and be, want to communicate with you. And I didn't see a whole lot of that, growing up. Like somebody else said earlier, like you wasn't supposed to be, weak. Like you gotta tough it out. Even as a female, like showing emotion was not always good. So talking about, what do you do to mask? Like you try to make jokes. Like we literally joke about everything. Like with this, going back to, the storm that we were just dealing with. Literally, all people that I know from here, we're like making jokes about it, but deep down we're terrified of, the possibility of what was happening, what could happen. But I mean, it's a never ending thing for me, I guess. I just seeing how other relationships have gone. I don't want to go down that road. Like, I don't want to get a divorce. I don't want to be, you know, that, a statistic with that. I want my first marriage to be my only marriage. And I don't want the drama, but I want to make sure that, I'm comfortable and I want him to be comfortable as well. So I'm learning to, you know, create a safe space for him as well.
Thank you, Deshaun.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Ashley has her hand raised. Come on.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, I'm not trying to get in contact with you, bro. To answer have you healed from your past? That's a multifaceted question. Um, I'm gonna say this. I am in the healing process. Um, how do I know that I'm in the healing process? I am evolving as a person. My load in my life has gotten lighter, which means I'm forgiving and letting go. And what does that process look like? You have to accept what's in front of you. You have to acknowledge what the problem is, what the issue is. You have to process that through your own personal emotions, and then you have to prepare yourself to deal with the forefront. For example, my mom, we have the worst relationship ever, or did, and I'm in the process of rebuilding that. And it's not gonna be easy. You're gonna get the door slammed in your face. You're gonna get the phone hung up in your face, and you have to be strong enough to deal with that. So you have to take care of self first in your healing process because you're gonna face a lot of adversity in this process. When you get to forgiving, you have to be able to forgive and let go. You can't forgive and then 5, 4, 3 years later be like, well, I forgave you, but remember when you did that? When you forgive, you let it go. You don't bring it up. You don't try to be slick about it. You don't throw shade. You have to use that same analogy when we talk about praying to God. When you pray to God for your worries, you no longer worry about them. Because if you're praying to God and asking Him for these things, and then you take it back to worry, you didn't really give it to Him. So if you're gonna forgive a person and then come back and throw a slug, you didn't really forgive that person. You're fooling yourself. So once you truly forgive that person and let it go, life is so much easier for you. I'm not there yet in certain situations. But with my mom and in my past relationships, I'm in the forgiving stage. And sometimes you can repair your relationships, and sometimes they are limit. Give them to the junkyard and move on. They're no longer your burdens.
Thank you, Ashley. Come on.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Can you guys hear me still?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. So we're gonna go on to the question for the men. And Yuli, I want you to touch on this because I know you talked about this in the chat a couple of times with some of your interactions with women. Help us understand how and why your income and being the breadwinner ties into your comfort with masculinity and relationships.
It stems from, well, for me personally, it stems from watching my father and my stepfather being breadwinners in prospective households. It starts with, my stepfather told me when I was young, to always pay the lion's share of the bills, so that way you don't be replaceable, if that makes sense. So when you grow up and you see these things, and then they taught me rules about dating, and when you court women, you always pay. You always be in a position where, my stepdad used to say, if I go down, the whole house go down, things like that. Like, so you see things like that over and over, and it's like, you automatically programmed to think, unless I feel comfortable enough, financially, I'm not going to be in nobody. I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to be in nobody's face if I don't feel like I got all my stuff together or all my ducks in a row or anything like that, because I don't feel adequate enough on my end, to be able to hold my own. You know what I mean? I got to be able to hold us down because I'm naturally just a provider. I was raised that way. So if I don't feel like I'm in position financially to provide, and I understand you can provide emotionally too, but how I grew up, it just wasn't expressed a lot. I didn't really see my stepdad and mom be affectionate to each other. So I could agree with a lot of what y'all said, but just on the financial piece, I go hard financially because I want to be able to financially support my family, and I want to make everybody's life easier. We live in a world where money is so important to livelihood and way of life and things like that. So if I could do all I can to keep us afloat there, then I feel like I've accomplished a lot as a man.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. So I can't see anybody else with their hand raised to answer the question.
Gucci.
I don't know how much more time. Gucci.
Gucci
But
had
Gucci been talking. Gucci been talking. Gucci been talking.
Come on, you're not gonna throw me under the bus like this, bro. You're not gonna do this.
Go
You're
ahead
not
and let
gonna
it
do
be.
this.
Go ahead
Not
and let
tonight.
Gucci,
Go ahead and
Not
let
gonna
it be
do
the
this.
last comment of the night. Let him
Nah,
go ahead and be the
No.
last
you got
comment.
your own
First,
cooking
first
show,
of all,
man.
y'all,
You talk too much.
because
Go ahead, brother.
time out.
Go ahead,
Because
brother. I'm joking.
Okay, somebody say I'm a person that really don't speak unless they have something valuable to say. Let me go ahead and clear my name up. Until that point, Kamal, for me, unlike many brothers on here, I was raised around good examples of men who provided, period. And so, though it was not necessarily a pressure on me as a man, it was understood that when you embrace a relationship, you don't embrace it just for the love factor alone, but you embrace it as an investment. And so part of me now, even at this stage in my life, I factor in how far I can lean into a relationship based off of how much I can legitimately bring to the table, because that's important for me. That's really important for me to be able to not just provide love, affection, but to be able to provide a roof over a woman's head for me. That's just how I saw my great grandfather do it for his family for years, and even as a young man, that standard has been modeled. And so it's valuable for, I guess, for me as a man. That's very important because, as some people would say, love alone can't pay the bills.
That's true.
I agree. So do we have time for one more, or are we gonna wrap this up?
Gonna wrap it up, sir.
All right, let's wrap it up.
So, as everybody in Facebook land and YouTube got to see the first premiere of this broadcast, we want to thank all the participants, male and female. We want to thank you for your time and your words of wisdom and vulnerability. For those that did not share, we do apologize, but you will have a chance to share all the comments in YouTube and Facebook. We appreciate it. I want to thank our co-host, which is Francie Cena, Kamal, sorry, I had a tongue twist, and myself. We also want to shout out the locker room with Bill and Eugene, first and third Thursdays. The Velvet Room with Ashina and
Rhonda.
Rhonda. Thank you. Thank you, on the second Thursday. And this will be every fourth Thursday. So tune back in on the fourth Thursday of the month. We will have new participants. So it's not going to be new topics. It's not going to be the same people. And always remember, there's somebody out there for you, and you deserve to be loved. Have a great night.
And
Real
lastly,
quick, Rob. Real
lastly,
quick. Can we say a quick word of prayer for Toya's mom?
For sure, we can.
Yes, that's what I was going to get to. Yeah,
no doubt. All right, let's bow our heads. Or actually, Gucci, go ahead and do that for us, please.
Oh, gracious God, our Father and our Creator, we thank you for this time of sharing tonight. Lord, we thank you for all that has been shared, but Lord, most importantly, as we close out tonight, we want to pray for Toya's mom. Oh God, we know that you're the God of all comfort, the God of all strength, who sees all and know all about our circumstances. So God, we pray right now in the name of Jesus that you would touch and meet her mother at the point of her need, Lord God. Even when we don't always have the words to say, you know the issues of our heart, and we know that we can entrust all of our issues to your care. So, Lord God, be with her even in this time. It's in your son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Participants, thank you for your time. Y'all have a great night. Thank you, Facebook and YouTube, for tuning in.